Hello and welcome to European Agenda program. Today we have United Union International Officer and Co-Ordinator of the Freedom for Ocalan Campaign, Clare Baker. Dear Clare, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. So we would like to talk to you about Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan's situation. As you know, the harsh isolation is still on. What are your conclusions about the treatment of Öcalan after 23 years of incarceration, first of all?
Well, I mean, his incarceration for that incredible amount of time is symptomatic of Turkey's incarceration, really, of the Kurdish people. His imprisonment is against international law, it's against Turkish law, and it's a collective punishment, really, for his ideas, for the Kurdish people, for their will to speak their own language, for women's rights, for equality within Turkey and outside its borders. And he is being kept in abhorrent conditions. You know, that isolation, not being able to see family, not being able to see lawyers, goes against all forms of international law that's on prisoners, but is not being addressed in any shape or form by the international community. So, you know, it's time that he was set free, so he can play his part in any sort of peace talks for that region.
Claire, another important issue is about the CPT. CPT has visited Turkey 29 times, as we recorded, but only 10 times has been in İmralı Island since 1999. So what is the impact of that visits? Has been any impact?
I don't think there's any impact of those visits. They don't make any effort to address the serious issues of Öcalan's imprisonment, but also the political prisoners across the whole of Turkey. Öcalan is the most extreme, yes, but there are hundreds and thousands of people that are imprisoned in Turkey for their political beliefs. And the CPT are not really addressing that in any shape or form. Öcalan still is in prison. There is still many political prisoners in abhorrent conditions, away from their families, in very nationalistic areas. They're not getting the right medical treatment. They're not getting to see lawyers, etc., when they need to. So it's a capitulation, really, by the European institutions to Erdogan for fear of, you know, that he'll let refugees out into Europe, and for his, you know, the geopolitical positioning of Turkey, that Europe feels that it has to capitulate to Erdogan all the time. So they send the CPT to Turkey, but nothing really comes of it at all.
Thank you. We already spoke. You make a good point about the silence of the CPT as well. Why is the European Union, which constantly sells itself very well on human rights, democracy, and compliance with the international agreements as well, is still silent about Mr. Öcalan's isolation, who is isolated from all of his human rights, basically? Why there is still no reaction against Turkey, do you think? Very shortly.
I really just think it is that the blackmailing, in the sense of Turkey towards the European Union, they're too afraid to speak up for Öcalan's rights for fear of what Turkey might do or might block, or, you know, I mean, we've seen recently the situation with NATO and Sweden and Finland. They need Turkey. They have strategic sites in Turkey that they need to keep Turkey on side. So to speak out against Öcalan puts the fear of God into them, really, and they don't want to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned the Sweden and Finland situation as well, so I would like to ask another extra question. That two unexpected countries actually cooperated in a disgusting way against the Kurdish people, as we can see. Is it possible to say that this situation actually gave Erdogan a green light to continue his massacres on the Kurdish people, and that they were trying to keep the PKK on the forbidden organizations list still?
I think it's very probable and very likely that this decision has given Erdogan a green light to invade. You know, there's a real possibility now that he could invade into north and east Syria to keep the repression of the Kurds up. I mean, he's extended that repression far now outside the borders of Turkey, right into Finland, right into Sweden. And, you know, those countries had a long history of supporting oppressed people, and in a couple of days they've thrown the whole thing away in order to, well, to apparently protect themselves against one dictator, but at the same time appeasing another dictator and selling the Kurdish people down the river in order to gain that protection that they feel that they'll get within NATO. So yes, I think, you know, they are now complicit. The Finnish governments, the Swedish governments are now complicit in any future decision that Turkey take against the Kurdish people.
When we talk about the PKKs, they're listing many MPs, many MEPs, as well as the trade unions as well. They are all saying that the keeping PKK on the forbidden organizations list, as well as keeping Mr. Öcalan under isolation, is two different faces of the same coin, two different faces of the same problem. So how would you going to evaluate that? How can the Kurdish movement get over this, basically?
Well, I mean, you've got the decision of the Belgian courts that now say that PKK is not a terrorist organisation, but a side in a civil war. Now, that you know, comes with its own boundaries. You know, there's certain things that you have to abide by if you're in a civil war, if you're a side of a civil war, certain Geneva Conventions. So it's not like letting the PKK off of anything. They still have to abide by human rights and certain Geneva Conventions. So you've got that call by the Belgian courts. You've got a lot of MEPs, that are also calling for the delisting. In the UK, we've had an all-parliamentary group report that's looked into a number of things to do with Kurdish oppression in Turkey, but one of them was obviously the PKK. And it recommends a review of the delisting of the PKK in the UK. But all the time that the European Union and the UK have the PKK on its terrorist list, Turkey can basically pick and choose who they decide is a terrorist. So you have people that are just expressing a political viewpoint, and that is a terrorist. If they stand out and speak against Erdogan in Turkey, they are a terrorist and they can be arrested for terrorism. So that includes women's groups, that includes the trade unions, that includes opposition parties. So it's a very dangerous road to go down, just across the board, calling anyone that speaks out for peace, for equality, for women's liberation as a terrorist. And Europe has to be ever so careful that it doesn't fall into that same line of that Turkey wants it to, by pointing at people and saying you're against Erdogan, so therefore you are a terrorist. And it comes back to Öcalan's situation as well, that anyone who supports him therefore is targeted with the label of terrorist.
So we can call this kind of a criminalization policy, as well as it's the labeling the Kurdish community as well. Do you think this Turkey is hiding behind of that labeling the PKK as a terrorist organization, and then carries its attacks to Kurdish people as well? Because still in Zap and Awashin, the Medya defense zones are under attack by chemical weapons as well. And Europe is still silent against that. Can we say that this labeling helps them to carry on these attacks?
It absolutely helps them. They do hide behind the criminalisation of the Kurdish people. It means that, you know, if that is taking place, if the chemical weapons are being dropped, Europe stays silent, because the answer always is Turkey is defending its borders. And it's a very easy answer that they can just throw off, say, and ignore what is actually happening on the ground. And using very emotive words like terrorism, defence, security, means that Turkey is now able to get away with things that other countries are being legitimately pulled up on. You know, the European Union is quite rightly standing up against Russia for its invasion into Ukraine. Where is the difference of what Turkey's doing to what Russia's doing?
Yeah, you mentioned Ukraine, and as we can see on the Ukraine about the chemical weapons, straight away the OPCW and EU institutions has take action in 10-15 days. But why do you think they still don't make any reactions in Turkey's chemical weapons allegations that chemical weapons has been used in Kurdistan against Kurdish freedom fighters? Do you think that's political?
Absolutely, it's political. They absolutely need Turkey on their side. Turkey's part of NATO. It's that bridge from Europe into the Middle East, and they want Turkey on side. And so anything that it does, it almost gets away with, and it's utterly wrong. And it's something that, you know, us in the West, on the left, should be standing against constantly.
We're coming to an end. I want to ask you another question, because once I find you there, also the arms trade there is the biggest supplier of Turkey is Britain, and you are representing millions of people as a trade unionist as well. So how the Kurdish movement will stop that? How the international community will make some voice about that? Because the Germany and the UK is the biggest arms dealer with Turkey. That's a big problem, as we know, in Bristol there is chemical weapons productions as well that has been sold to Turkey. So how would you going to comment on that?
It's a difficult one. Obviously, on a very humanitarian level, we are absolutely, utterly against the supply of arms to Turkey in order to kill civilians. But, you know, from a trade union perspective, you know, we have members that work in those workplaces. So, you know, and as you may know, the situation in the UK at the moment is quite serious for, you know, there's a lot of pressure on the cost of living, on people's jobs, on energy crisis, etc. So we don't want people to be out of their jobs, and we're not calling for them to be out of their jobs. I think more it's an education to the people that work in those companies, to put pressure on those companies not to supply and be part of that supplying of arms into Turkey, and to put political pressure onto the UK government as to stop that themselves and to review their own defence strategy. Not to stop making them, but to review it so that they're not selling arms to states such as Turkey and many others that use arms for killing of civilians.
Yeah, when we get back to our main topic, lastly, the Freedom for Ocalan campaign in UK, what role can the trade union movement play in the struggle to free Ocalan? And do you think this campaign should be work harder to reach to the unions in Europe as well?
Yes, I mean, you know, we can bring a lot of education to people, to our members who are across the whole of the country. They work in all sorts of workplaces. They're just ordinary, I hate to say the word ordinary, but they're just ordinary men and women that are going about their business that wouldn't normally know who Öcalan is or what the Kurdish situation or the struggle is. So it's about an education to see this is what's happening to these people. They're the same as you, they live in a different part of the world, but this is what's happening to them, and this is the man that stands up for them, and he's been in prison for 23 years. We always link it to Nelson Mandela because it's an extremely similar situation, and the left in the UK very much understand and fought for Nelson Mandela's freedom. So it's a good link that we can make there. We are talking to a lot of trade unions within Europe, and we've got a lot of support especially from France, from Spain and from Italy, for Öcalan's freedom. And we're, you know, trying to expand that a little bit more, maybe even into the Republic of Ireland as well. So, you know, it's been a short period of time since the campaign started, but, you know, it is still gaining momentum. We're still getting new unions coming on board in the UK, and we hope to expand that outside into the European Union.
Dear Clare Baker, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Today, another European Agenda program, we had United Union International Officer and Co-Ordinator of the Freedom for Ocalan campaign. Thanks for joining us and see you on the next European Agenda program.